Chinese government is to be congratulated for the extraordinary measures it has taken to contain the outbreak. The speed with which China detected the outbreak, isolated the virus, sequenced the genome, and shared it with WHO and the world are very impressive and beyond words. China is actually setting a new standard for outbreak response, and it's not an exaggeration.
That's the top public health official in the world, and everything you just heard him say there was a lie. A recent 60 Minutes piece from Australia, a piece our media are not playing, shows just how deep the lies go. In fact, there was nothing speedy about how China detected the outbreak and then warned the world. Indeed, they did the exact opposite.
From the very beginning, throughout December, it was spreading, and we now know it was spreading human to human. But the official line of the Chinese government was that this was all related to an animal market, and once they closed the market, it would all go away.
Did they know differently at that time?
Absolutely. Because they were seeing cases coming into the hospitals that had nothing whatsoever to do with that animal market.
So the World Health Organization's leadership tells you that China, quote, set the standard for the outbreak to the response. Apparently that standard includes disappearing doctors who tell the truth about it.
As China now tries to rewrite history and claim it was transparent all along, a final nail in the coffin of their lie. Just 2 weeks ago, the head of emergency at Wuhan Central Hospital, Dr. Ai Fen, also went public, saying authorities had stopped her and her colleagues from warning the world. She has now disappeared, whereabouts unknown.
Again, why is it left to Australian media to produce a piece like this? The truth is, as 60 Minutes Australia explains, instead of worrying about these developments, in early February, the director of the World Health Organization was still lecturing the public that using terms like Wuhan virus was racist.
Having a name matters to prevent the use of other names that can be inaccurate or stigmatizing.
You might think that a World Health Organization, a group that got 58 million of your tax dollars last year, might care that a government arrests doctors and lies about deadly new diseases, but no. Like so many other organizations, they are lapdogs for the powerful, and that means their real job is sucking up to the Chinese government.
Now, COVID is not the flu. We're not saying that. It's a lot more contagious, and it's new. It hits the old hardest, young, relatively unscathed by it, relatively. And according to researchers, there are as many as 33 mutations to COVID-19. Yet the COVID mortality rate, we now know, because now we have the data, is a fraction of what a lot of the professionals, the experts, told us it would be. Well, it's inconvenient truths like that that led doctors Erickson and Masihi, who join us in moments, to produce a video calling for California to be reopened.
0.03 chance of dying from COVID in the state of California. Does that necessitate sheltering in place? Does that necessitate shutting down medical systems? Does that necessitate people being out of work? When you're a little child crawling on the ground, putting stuff in your mouth, viruses and bacteria come in, you form an antigen-antibody complex. This is how your immune system is built. You don't take a small child, put them in bubble wrap in a room and say, go have a healthy immune system.
They also say they're hearing from doctors discussing the possibility that there is a confluence of deaths being reported.
When someone dies in this country right now, they're not talking about the high blood pressure, the diabetes, the stroke. They say, did they die from COVID? We've been to hundreds of autopsies. You don't talk about one thing, you talk about comorbidities. ER doctors now, my friends that I talk to say, it's interesting, when I'm writing up my death report, I'm being pressured to add COVID. Why is that?
And then they came to this conclusion.
Something else is going on here. This is not about science, and it's not even about COVID. When they use the word safe, if you listen to the word safe, that's about controlling you.
Well, big science, the medical establishment, whatever you want to call it, is already coming after them since their videos have gone, sorry for the pun, viral. Those are my thoughts at the end of day 42, America in shutdown. All right, we got such a huge reaction to the two docs we had on at the top of the show, Dan Erickson and Artin Masihi. Well, YouTube just took down their viral video challenging the COVID narrative when it comes to, what's happening in California especially. Ironically, this is exactly what they warned about, that this isn't about science, this is about control. And in this case, control of a narrative. We should have seen it coming. YouTube CEO was on CNN 8 days ago saying, quote, anything that would go against World Health Organization recommendations would be a violation of our policy. Removal is another really important part of our policy. Well, if you aren't worried about censorship in this country, you better be now. It's not the government doing it, but something that controls so much of the dialogue. It's fairly close to the kind of censorship I never thought we'd see in this country. That is truly terrifying.
We've seen 1,227 deaths in the state of California with a possible incidence or prevalence of 4.7 million. That means you have a 0.03 chance of dying from COVID-19 in the state of California. 0.03 chance of dying from COVID in the state of California. Does that necessitate sheltering in place? Does that necessitate shutting down medical systems? Does that necessitate people being out of work? We aren't pressured to test for flu, but ER doctors now, my friends that I talk to say, it's interesting, when I'm writing up my death report, I'm being pressured to add COVID. Why is that? Why are we being pressured to add COVID to maybe increase the numbers and make it look a little bit worse than it is? I think so.
At best, we can plod along with open minds and good faith. More informed debate is exactly what we need to make wise decisions going forward. Unfortunately for all of us, informed debate is exactly what the authorities don't want. They want unquestioned obedience, so they're cracking down on free expression. Last night, the doctor's video, the one you just saw, was pulled off of YouTube, the largest video hosting site in the world. It wasn't an accident. YouTube admitted doing it. The company cited a violation of, quote, community guidelines, and they did not apologize. Looking back, when all of this is finally over, and it will be, it's likely that we'll see this moment, what YouTube just did, as a turning point in the way we live in this country, a sharp break with 250 years of law and custom. The two doctors' video was produced by a local television channel in California. It was, in effect, a mainstream news story. The video was not pornographic. It didn't violate copyright or incite violence or commit libel. It didn't break any law. The only justification for taking it down was that the two physicians on screen had reached different conclusions from the people currently in charge. It was a form of dissent from orthodoxy. YouTube and its parent company Google have now officially banned dissent. The CEO of YouTube admitted that openly.
But then we also talk about removing information that is problematic. Of course, anything that is medically unsubstantiated. So people saying like, take vitamin C, take turmeric, like those all will cure you. Those are the examples of things that would be a violation of our policy. Anything that would go against World Health Organization recommendations would be a violation of our policy. And so remove is another really important part of our policy.
So you're not just putting the truth next to the lie, you're taking the lie down. That's a pretty aggressive approach.
We're removing, quote, anything that would go against World Health Organization recommendations. It'll now be taken off the internet. Consider that for a minute. As a matter just of science, it's ludicrous. Like everyone else involved in global pandemic policy, the WHO has often been wrong in its recommendations. A lot of people have. In mid-January, WHO told us that coronavirus could not spread from person to person. In March, they told us that face masks didn't work. Those were lies, and they were welcome on Google's platforms. Doctors who are actually treating patients with the virus, meanwhile, have just been banned. So no, this is not about science. Censorship never is about science. It's about power. Big technology companies are using this tragedy to increase their power over the American population. They're working in concert with politicians in order to do it. So what do we have here? We have Americans locked in their homes, banned from going to church, placated with sedatives like weed and beer. Anyone who speaks up is silenced. Political demonstrations are illegal. Organizers are arrested. Only opinions approved by leaders, many of them unelected, are allowed on information platforms. Does that sound familiar? It sounds a lot like China. Of all the many ironies of this moment, so many of them bitter, the hardest to swallow is this one. As we fight this virus, we are becoming far more like the country that spawned it. We are becoming more like China. It's horrifying. And it tells you everything that our professional class enthusiastically welcomes this. Those in power are the ones our professional class seeks to protect, not the rest of the country. Freedom of conscience never endangers the public. It only threatens the powerful. It endangers their control. It hinders their ability to dictate election results, to loot the economy, to make policies based on a whim for their own gain. No wonder our leaders have done such a poor job protecting us from China. They're on the same team.